Time for the Sunshine State Showdown, covering every top sports story in the state of Florida, from South Beach to the state capitol and everything in between. And now, without further ado, your hosts, Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
Yes, indeed, folks. Welcome into the Sunshine State Showdown, covering all the biggest sports topics percolating in the Sunshine State. We are your hosts, Brandon Kravitz from Orlando. He's Zac Blobner, the MJ of the Bay. We're all across the state of Florida: Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville. Oh, he's feeling it on Monday. Find us streaming on iHeart, Facebook, Twitter. Check, and check. Great show planned for you today. Glenn Geffner, who's the voice of the Marlins, still to come. And that is the housekeeping. Zac, they have opened up gyms around the state of Florida. And my question I've been wanting to ask you all day long, are you going?
First of all, I'm going to answer that question emphatically, but you just ran away from me on the video feed. I feel attacked. I feel like you're hiding from me.
Yeah, that's an internet issue. So I'm just going to have to let that figure itself out.
I'm glad that I'm not having any more gym issues. I'm very torn on it. So, I'll be honest. My first thought when I saw that they were reopening Monday, which is now today, was, well, I'm not going to rush right back in because I feel like everybody's going to rush right back in. And that's for anything. Anytime everybody's rushing to one spot, I'm like, I'll be patient. Like movies when they first come out. Typically, I'm like, I'll give it a few days. I don't know. I'm in this weird place. I don't think I'm ready to go back to a bigger gym, a Crunch Fitness, a YMCA, Planet Fitness, any of those. I'm not prepared to do that just yet, but I'm going to go check out my apartment gym and see if I can clang and bang a little bit after the show today.
Clang and bang. Okay.
You got to get in it, baby.
That's why you're the MJ of the Bay right there. It's stuff like that.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too crazy. And here's the thing too. I can walk to my apartment gym, and if it is packed by some crazy reason, I can literally just turn around and then force myself to go for a run and be upset the whole time. But nonetheless, I have the option. If I drive over to one of the bigger gyms that I have access to, it's not going to end as well if it is packed. The other thing too is you can't wear a mask at the gym.
No, you can't.
You gotta breathe, man.
Yeah, I think I've come up with a strategy. I'm not ready yet. I'm thinking about it, but I think what I'll do is I'll designate I'll walk in and say I'm designating 2 machines in my mind. I'm not gonna call dibs like it's shotgun in a car, but I'm gonna designate 2 machines in my mind. I'm gonna keep it really light, and then just hit those 2 machines and then bounce. I think part of the thing is for me is if I can stay far enough away from people and not use a lot of different machinery, then I'm probably keeping myself safer. So if I know I'm spending a good amount of time wiping down, use those 2 and then go, and then maybe next week I add a 3rd machine, and kind of trickle my way. Look, right now I'm not doing anything outside of riding my bike around the neighborhood. So anything would be an upgrade for me.
Though. That's good.
No,
here's the thing. I do promise you this much, Brandon. I'm going to be much more vocal when I see people not wiping their bench down, not re-racking their weights, just being irresponsible in the gym.
Have you thought about what you're going to say?
Something that I can't probably say on air right now that we would probably have to talk to the FCC. I mean, it depends on who it is too. With younger people, I try to be more lenient because I'm I get it. Maybe they haven't been talked to as much, or people that look like they're not doing it intentionally. But sometimes you get a hard ass that's in there, and then they're just who, I'm going to the next thing. And they just as if the world doesn't exist, and they're in this zone where they're not allowed to be responsible. And those people, look, might have a little bit of an altercation. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's not okay though.
That'll be more like an MMA gym at that point. All right, let's clang it. Let's clang and bang some sports topics. The Last Dance documentary is over. I am sad. I feel like Michael Jordan retired all over again. I've been thinking about this, Zac, and it honestly, I'm right there, and you're, in my age range. We kind of grew up where he was this superhero that played basketball, and then I remember as I got into the NBA, immediately fell in love with Michael Jordan, and then he retired, and that broke my heart. And then he came back, and then he retired again, and that broke my heart. When he came back with the Wizards, I don't think I cared. They also didn't detail that. Forget about it.
He deleted that from his life.
This wasn't okay.
Delete the Wizards part of his life.
I don't want to lose my train of thought here, but I've heard a lot of people complain about that. This is not a Michael Jordan documentary. This is a Bulls documentary told by Michael Jordan. So technically, you didn't need to put the Wizards in there. I would have liked to see it, but this was called The Last Dance. It was detailing the Bulls as seen through the scope of Michael Jordan. This wasn't Michael Jordan's career. So that's why I'm okay with them leaving it out.
We'll get back to that.
Okay. But my point is like he broke my heart once, then he broke my heart again when he retired the second time. Forget about the Wizards as they did. And then I feel today like he retired again. This is how I felt when I was 14. So that's what I'm dealing with today. I'm coping.
It's funny that so I looked at it through the same scope. But some of the things that popped out to me were more so the first thing, and I said this morning with Ronnie and T-Crass on WDAE here in Tampa. I remember seeing Rodman on Nitro with the NWO. I remember that. I also remember seeing them play those playoffs as a kid. And for me at the time, I was just like, oh, this is cool. This guy's in both places.
You didn't put it together. I didn't either.
No, but now watching it and you see it and you're like, what the hell was he doing?
I know.
What are you doing? You can't leave. So that part of it was really funny to me because again, I remembered as a kid being like, that's really cool. But now as an adult, I'm like, what the F, dude? What are you doing? So interesting that you pointed out how different it is, the scope to see things as an adult and as a kid. The other thing I really liked that I related to a lot with Michael Jordan was the fact that he had a full pizza delivered to him and he ate a full pizza.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the people I love most in life not only can eat a full pizza, but they insist on eating a full pizza. So I'm like, that made me love MJ even more. And the fact that it made him so sick afterwards, I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes. You eat a full pizza, you're excited, you're sick. The difference is he's MJ, he's the GOAT. So he still had a fantastic game in the NBA Finals. Following that, we would not. Me and you would be out MIA for at least a day.
No. I don't. I think I would forget about flu, food poisoning, whatever. If I just ate a full pizza the night before, I'm not even doing the show. So that's it. Does cheesy dad joke for you? Does the goat eat goat cheese on his pizza? Is that something?
Oh man, that's not a bad joke. I could go for another slice.
Oh, I have so many questions in regard to that pizza story. I mean, that just really blew my mind. Is that
a lot?
So many. I mean, I could spend the entire hour on it. What do you think is the biggest question that remains after watching this entire?
Wait, are we in the opening round? I don't even know.
We are.
Are we?
We are.
Okay, I
currently
just want to make
opening round. Yeah.
Okay.
I rang the bell. You didn't hear it?
I'm so in this MJ mode. It's feeling good. We're talking about it. I didn't even know if we started the show yet.
I have so many different MJ angles. I swear. I love this. I'm not one of those. Right. There's a lot of crotchety radio guys today that are like, oh, why are you spending time talking about something that happened 20 years ago? It's because it's awesome. That's why this is great. This is 1,000%. This is so good. I mean, this is just so compelling to me.
Now,
go ahead.
Back to the Wizard thing real quick before we go too far away from it, because I answered your question, but I'm not bothered that they acted like the Wizard, time for Michael Jordan didn't exist. I get it. I understand why, and I get what the documentary is about. But it did exist, and I'll go a step further, Brandon. Not only did that exist, he's been awful as a part of Charlotte's basketball organization, from the Hornets to the Bobcats. Dumb transition to that mascot, with the Bobcats. So I love MJ. And look, we can be honest, it doesn't hurt his legacy at all having those two things be as bad as they were for him and are for him.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you learn wow, this guy, man, he'll bet over quarters in the locker room waiting to go on the court. He'll never lose. But then you think about it and you're like, he does a lot of losing now. He's making a ton of money. He can afford to be an owner of a team, but Charlotte's been so bad.
Yeah.
So bad. And the Wizards were, as well.
No, I know. And I think something similar could be said for Phil Jackson. Look at all the titles that he won with the Bulls and the Lakers, and then goes to the Knicks, and the end of his career was a tire fire. And so,
very true.
I don't know. I think that we ignore it as sports fans, and for people certainly in our generation that admire and idolize Michael Jordan to the degree that we do. Honestly, we look at him the same way that he looks at himself. If that story was told through the eyes of Michael Jordan, he looked like a demigod in this series, and that's how I view him. So I'm not bothered by it at all. And that's why I choose to ignore.
The bar can be set high enough. You can set the bar
yeah.
so high that you're good. Like nothing you can do. And honestly, and Brandon, I want to get your opinion on this because I'm so close to the fire here. That's why for me, like if Tom Brady comes to Tampa and they suck, and let's just say it's just awful, Tom Brady's still the GOAT. Like his legacy isn't going to be, in my opinion, tarnished at all. He's playing with house money. I mean, he built a 20-year dynasty in New England. I'm pretty sure if he comes to Tampa what is he now? Like 65? Like,
ouch.
I'm pretty sure he's good
listening.
Either way. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not betting. I'm betting money on the opposite, by the way. Put my peanuts in that bag. But for what it's worth, if it didn't go well, I think it'd all be good. It'd be okay.
I'm completely with you. I've said that a number of times on my own show that there's nothing that he could do at this point in his life or his career to ding his legacy. The only thing that I think you can make an argument would ding his legacy isn't so much involved with what he does. It's what the Patriots do. If Jarrett Stidham comes in and they win 10 games this year, they win a couple playoff games, all of a sudden you start to question the greatness of Tom Brady. I think that for me, question his greatness more if that happens than if Tom Brady falls apart, because I can just look and go, different system, old age, he's playing at a time when most quarterbacks are not successful, and even though he's Tom Brady and he's in great shape and he eats kale smoothies, at some point father time's going to catch up with you. So I can reconcile with that side of it, but if the Patriots are successful without him and a guy that nobody has real faith in, then I start to go, what would have Brady been without Bill Belichick? I think he would have been great, but that's the only thing for me that would ding his resume at this point.
For sure. Yeah, no, and that's why, again, back to the Last Dance and the MJ doc, it excels beyond what we were just talking about in the NBA. I mean, because now me and you are finding a way to bleed that into what's going on with Brady in Tampa Bay and in football. I'm sure we could do the same thing in baseball with certain guys if we really wanted to delve deeper. In hockey, I mean, there's been fantastic players that have moved on and played. Gretzky, I mean, right, he wasn't known for just one team. I mean, when he got traded, like, that shocked the world. So I think that there's a lot of parallels when you talk about not just the elite, but the elite of the elite of the elite, like the top-notch 5 guys in every league that's ever played. There's a lot of things that kind of go hand in hand. Typically, you don't get this fairy tale ending where a guy rides off into the sunset after 20 years with the same team or 10 years with the same team. And that's it. Even Peyton Manning went from Indianapolis to Denver. I mean, we could do this day in, day out. But it just, if you're a sports fan, not a Bulls fan, not even necessarily an NBA fan, but if you're a sports fan, you have to be able to appreciate this.
Absolutely. And look, we tell the story of Peyton Manning going to the Broncos. We choose to ignore Michael Jordan with the Wizards because he did have a fairy tale ending, and then he came back and it didn't really go well. And we choose to forget that because that's just not part of the fairy tale. I think that's one of the things that makes Michael so great. It's not only that he was great, it's that his story is so clean. I mean, just picture perfect. It's a movie. And you compare it to LeBron James, forget about comparing them on the court. If you just compare the arc of their story, it's not even close. One's a movie, one is a hot mess. It's all over the place. I think LeBron's a great dude. I'm just saying, like, if you were a writer and you wrote MJ's story, that thing would get sold in a heartbeat. I mean, from getting cut in his high school to then getting recruited by Dean Smith, hitting a game-winning shot at North Carolina, losing against the bad boy Pistons, having to overcome that, then beating Magic Johnson, one of the greatest of all time, winning 3 in a row, going and playing baseball after his father passes away, coming back, wearing a different number, not being the same guy, going back to his old number and becoming Michael Jordan again. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that you write about. And then hitting that shot against the Jazz, it's just so perfect that I think we all will I know that for me, the way they encapsulated it is the way I remember it. And so I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah, it's a full chef's kiss. It was beautiful. Go. And look, the thing with LeBron, and this is all, like, I don't care if anybody ever points this out. For me, the way that I look at it, I think the biggest knock on him, and you brought it up, is that when you look at a great story, like, those things all matter. And if LeBron were to have stayed in Cleveland, not left, won, and then came back and won, and that helped. It definitely did a little bit. But at that point, you had Kyrie on board. You had Kevin Love that you had traded for. I think if LeBron would have stayed with Cleveland and found a way to start winning there, then the comparables are so much easier. But because of the path, and it's not necessarily a knock on his path, but it is a knock on his story. And if your story's not as good as MJ's, which is very hard, if not impossible to do, then it's going to be hard to compare you and give you credit that you might actually be better than that guy.
All right, vote on this poll that I put out there earlier today. We'll end on this. What was the best talking point for sports fans coming out of The Last Dance? MJ versus LeBron debate, which is always a fun one to have. Could they have won 7? Michael Jordan mentioned that at the very end of the series. Jerry Krause, is he a villain or a genius? People want to vilify this guy, but he did build this dynasty. And the final one is who poisons pizza. So which one would you vote on there? The biggest takeaway, talking point, sports fans, if you were allowed to huddle around a bar, which I guess you're allowed to some degree. What do you think the biggest talking point is today?
So I think today it's the 7th championship, and the LeBron Michael thing will always be a debate. Someday LeBron James will retire and a new guy will be the next crowned king in basketball. And it'll be a debate if he was as good or could be or will be as good as MJ. Like that'll always be there. So I don't think the documentary flamed that conversation back up. It's always been that way. The pizza thing, hilarious. But I don't think that that's necessarily something we'd be talking about, if there was another 2 episodes on the way. We'd pivot to something else next week. And Jerry Krause, like that thing is a little rough. I think if God rest his soul, if he was still alive and we could hear his side, that would have a lot more room for us to be like, I need to know what he wants to think. Oh, he said this. What do you have to say to that, MJ? Like that would definitely make it more conversational, but it's such a one-sided story and it will never change because Jerry Krause has passed away. So for me, it's like, okay, well, we have to think what we think and shelf that. The 7th championship, Brandon, is something that eats away at Michael Jordan every day. And it's the most valid question of all, I think, because you could argue that the LeBron, Michael Jordan part, that's opinion-based. You like who you like, you believe in what you believe in. A lot of it is age or just who you've watched more of. But with the 7th champion, like that's a mystery. That's like, imagine loving a TV show. And we've all had at least one show or one movie that we've seen. And there's like a cliffhanger, but it doesn't get renewed or there isn't a sequel. And you never get to find out. You're like, oh my God, I love that. That was one of the best stories I've ever seen or ever read or watched or whatever. But if there's no follow-up, that's something that eats at you forever. You're like, I can't believe they canceled that show. Like we all have those different shows and movies and books in our life. So the 7th championship, although obviously for MJ, it's an even higher level of curiosity and mystery that'll never be answered. I think for us as sports fans, and especially if you are a basketball fan, you also will always be wondering if they would have won another one.
Very well said. Right around the corner, health and safety protocols released to MLB players. They're kind of weird. We'll talk about them next.
Welcome back to the Showdown with your hosts, Brendan Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Time for some added insight. Let's head to the Sunshine State Hotline.
I know when that hotline blink.
We're joined by Glenn Geffner, Marlins broadcaster. You can catch the Marlins Rewind on 940 Wins tomorrow night after we go off the air at 6 p.m. It's Jose Fernandez week. So we'll be replaying his 14 strikeout game from August 2013 against the Cleveland Indians. Glenn, welcome to the show. What do you remember about that game, and how much do you miss Jose?
Well, a lot and a lot, I guess, is the best answer to your two questions. We've got a couple of Jose games coming up this week, and the other on Thursday night is the night he came back from Tommy John surgery and won the ball game against the Giants, hit a home run in that game as well. The thing I remember most of all about the 14K game, or really any time Jose took the mound, was you knew every morning when you woke up when it was going to be a Jose start, you had a chance to see something very special. And the electricity that he brought to the mound every fifth day, the electricity he brought to the ballpark, wherever he was pitching, home or on the road, the energy. He was a very unique talent, a very unique human being, and he's really, really missed. And when you look at some of the things that have happened with this franchise over the course of the last few years, I don't think people talk enough about what a turning point for the Marlins the death of Jose Fernandez was. And a lot of things might have played out very differently for this team had that not happened. And you never know how things would have played out. But when you have a pitcher like that atop any rotation, a legitimate major league ace, not just the guy who starts on opening day for a team, but a legitimate ace, and you have the lineup that the Marlins had at that point, which was coming into its own, things might have looked a lot different moving forward.
I'm glad you said that, Glenn, because I had already predetermined, like, that was my question I wanted to ask you. There's certainly an emotional side to what happened with Fernandez, and not only just Marlins fans, but baseball fans, sports fans, just humans. Like, we all felt that in some capacity. It was tragic. However, there is a baseball business side to it, and it really felt like that from a baseball standpoint was a huge setback in the Marlins, plan moving forward. I mean, just kind of, I guess, gauge how much that really did set the franchise back.
Well, I think if you look big picture, I would say for one thing, you might think this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm not sure Jeffrey Loria would have sold the team had that not happened. He was so devastated, so personally crushed by what happened that it just ripped his heart and soul out, and he just really couldn't go on. It affected everybody who was on that team or around that team on a daily basis in such a way where you just look at where that team was at that time. And it hadn't even had a winning season or even an 81 and 81 500 season with Stanton and with Ozuna and with Yelich and with Real Muto and with D. Gordon and with Jose Fernandez atop that rotation. But if you keep that group together for another year or two as they're continuing to come into their own, and you have that ace atop your rotation that you can build a rotation around, you got a legitimate shot. And I think if you look at the way things play out with service time and contract situations, there's no way this franchise would have been able to keep all of those players around forever. And there would have been a question eventually about would they be able to retain Jose Fernandez once he got the free agency. But there was a window in there with Jose. And then you take it another step further and you look at the mistakes that were made after Jose's passing, in trying to say, you know what, let's still try to make a run at this and let's spend some money that wasn't really intelligently spent, whether it was some of the pitchers they brought in and trying to build a super bullpen and giving too much money away to some older relievers who are at the end of their careers, and to bring a starter or two in who probably weren't going to come anywhere near matching what Jose was going to do for you, but giving them some substantial money that was, for this team, especially at that time, significant dollars and cents. So, certainly taking Jose off that club and then some of the moves that were made in trying to make up for the loss of Jose, when that really should have been the point where you say, you know what, we've got to start over. And maybe you'd now be a couple of years even further along in this building process than the Marlins are.
Marlins play-by-play voice, Glenn Geffner, joining the show. Your thoughts on the health and safety guidelines that was released by Major League Baseball? It's extensive. I don't expect you to break down all 67 pages, but just a general overview of what you saw and whether or not you think that this is something that could work as the baseball tries to come back.
I'll tell you, when that 67-page document came out for the first time in a while, I feel like I was less optimistic about seeing baseball come back. We said all along that you've got to have everything right from a health and safety standpoint before you worry about anything else, before you worry about how many games you play or where you play or fans or dollars, things like that. But this, I think, really in black and white shows you how complicated coming back is from a health and safety standpoint. And to me, it's going to be tough, and maybe it can be done. One of the things I find interesting that I don't think has been talked about a whole lot is you've got Major League Baseball, you've got the NBA and the NHL hoping to finish their season, you've got the NFL getting ready to start. You'd think there'd be more collaboration than at least we're hearing about among the four leagues. You'd think the four leagues, and I know each situation is different. The calendar is a little bit different, especially with football, and some sports are played indoors, some are played outdoors. But you'd think there'd be more collaboration, because if one league makes a judgment that it's just not safe enough for us to come back, and another couple of leagues say we are coming back, what does that look like? Good, bad, either way for which of those leagues, and who's proven to be right? You'd think at some point all the leagues need to get together and say this is what we are collectively going to be able to do or not be able to do. And again, football's calendar is a little bit different. So they have a little bit more time. But, how is it different really for Major League Baseball than it would be for other leagues? And it just shows for anybody how complicated it's going to be to resume play. And as much as we'd all love to see it, as much as we're all dying for entertainment right now, we'd love to even just see the games on TV and have our teams to root for. It's going to be an immense challenge. And it's not to say that challenge and all the challenges can't be overcome. But I think seeing this in black and white last week really makes you realize just how tough it's going to be.
We had the privilege to talk to Charles Johnson about a month ago. We were asking him just about like hypotheticals. And one of the things he pointed out, I give him a lot of credit because it was the first time I had heard somebody bring it up, is the fact that baseball players spit constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Like seeds, like chewing tobacco, bubble gum, whatever their thing is, they all spit nonstop. And I was like, at first I was like, that's such a weird thing to bring up. But now that we're looking through some more of the safety procedures that they're going to put in place, and we're talking about these different things, I'm like, holy crap, how are they going to stop all these baseball players, all of them, from spitting? Like, I just don't think it's plausible among many, many other parts of what they're looking to do. I know they mentioned maybe that they might have like your backup reserve catcher might have to sit high in the stands. Glenn, I hope it all works out. I'm very optimistic, but on the same hand, little things like that are just like habitual. I don't know how guys are going to stop doing it.
Well, they've talked about banning chewing tobacco and banning sunflower seeds for those exact reasons. But again, you mentioned the word habitual, and there are so many things that are simply habitual about the way baseball players or athletes or any of us go about our lives on a daily basis. And when you say no high fives, when you say a first base coach or a third base coach can't approach a base runner, when you can't argue with an umpire or you can't have a conversation with a base runner at second base when you're playing shortstop, things like that are habitual. No fraternizing. The Marlins players can't talk to the Phillies players when they're on the field before the game starts or between innings when they're crossing, leaving the field or going onto the field. Those things are just habitual. They're human nature. They're things that they've all done their entire lives. And it's tough. I watched the NASCAR race a little bit yesterday because I was curious to see how Fox was going to televise that event remotely, what it would look like. And for me, NASCAR is a sport where it kind of made sense. They were able to make it work. But still, you look in the pits and you see everybody wearing the masks. And when they did the interviews after the race, you had the microphone on the long metal rod. You didn't have the interview right up next to the race car driver he was talking to. Things like that. They are the habits, whether it's spitting or high-fiving or patting somebody on the back or whatever it may be, a manager going out and having a conference on the mound, that you wonder how you can get around that stuff. And again, I want to be optimistic also. Nobody wants to see baseball come back more than I do. And I'm not saying that they can't find a way to make this work, but this really makes you realize how hard it's going to be. And at some point, you just wonder if somebody says, you know what, we've just got to put this all on hold for everybody's sake and maybe come back next spring. And hopefully the world is in a place where we can come back and even with some adaptations, we're all going to probably have to make in our lives moving forward, have what seems like a more normal kind of baseball season.
And Glenn, one of the things to me that's a little bit goofy about all of this is that I understand the protocol and what they're trying to do. The no showers thing, I honestly don't quite get, but I don't understand the science behind that. Perhaps somebody else could.
Right back to the hotel, isn't it?
I don't get that. And Glenn, I can't imagine. You mentioned no high fives. I can't imagine like the story coming out on ESPN's Bottom Line. So and so earns a high five fine. It's just gonna look so goofy. I want baseball to come back as much as the next guy, but this is kind of weird. I don't know I think that this shines a light on kind of what you said about optimism. If you realize that you have to go through all of this in order to just play a baseball game, then I don't know that we can play baseball games.
Well, and then you apply it to other sports. Do football teams not huddle right up next to each other to call a play? What do you do with a tip-off in basketball, or how do you guard somebody? It shows you where we are in this pandemic world we're living in right now. And it is crazy. We said in the beginning, if they come back, there's no way it's going to be ideal, and everybody's going to have to make concessions. Players are going to have to make some concessions. Owners are going to have to make some concessions. But again, seeing it spelled out over 67 pages, and now we'll see what happens with those 67 pages, because from what I understand, that document went out to all the clubs and to all the Players Association officials, and now everybody's got about a week to respond. And those 67 pages aren't set in stone. There may be things added. There may be things deleted. You read about players having to wash their hands every half inning. And I just think about the line at the sink. We're trying to keep the game moving along and limit the time between innings. Now you got guys lined up because you had 3 men on base when the inning ended. They got to run back in, and one after another, they got to wash their hands before they grab their gloves and go back out and take the field. Things like that. It really is just remarkable, and you couldn't have made this stuff up.
Yeah, it's crazy. Glenn Geffner, Marlins broadcaster. You can catch Marlins Rewind on 940 Wins, Miami Sports. It's Jose Fernandez week, and tomorrow night it's going to be the replay of the 14 strikeout game in 2013 against the Cleveland Indians. Glenn Geffner on the call there. Thank you so much for your time, Glenn. We appreciate your insights, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it.
I hope I didn't rain on anybody's optimistic parade. I still want to hope there's baseball, but we'll see. Good talking with you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
You too, man.
I for one, Zach, appreciate his honesty. I know that in particularly in our business, I think that people kind of expect that from us. That's what we're supposed to deliver to you. I mean, Glenn's entire livelihood is calling baseball games. That's what he does. And to have that stripped away and then to also not be optimistic, I mean, you have to appreciate his realistic view on all of this, because this is somebody, as there are many around the country, that need baseball to come back. We want baseball to come back. He needs it to come back. And so I appreciate him looking at this through a lens of reality.
Well, and the thing is like, look, we can sit here and have a million conversations and we can end them all with, they'll figure it out.
Right.
But when you start asking, like, and not just like the people making the decisions, just you and I, or Glenn and us, and we're asking each other, like, I wonder what they're going to do for this. And none of us know, because we're like, I don't know how you can stop it. That's a big issue. If you can't even get creative in the conversations like we're having with some things. So that's a big issue. Another quick point, too. You mentioned the waiting in line to use the sink and how that's going to really kill the speed of the game. Brandon, speaking from time spent around different dugouts, major league dugouts, mind you, that's one thing. You're talking about using a sink. These guys, when they have to go to the bathroom, they're going in and out of like a really small, close bathroom. Like they're not going to the luxury bathroom up in the suites. That's going to be an issue too. And like whatever they're doing hygienic wise, if you're really spacing these guys out and making them like keep their distance and be extra careful, man, you're talking about 3-hour games turning into 6-hour games.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how you take that 67. Not that I read all 67 pages, mind you, but I don't know how you do it. Right around the corner, we close it down. Coast to Coast is next.
Rain or shine, these guys have you covered. Now back to the Sunshine State Showdown with Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
The Sunshine State Showdown rolls along on a Monday. Remember, if you missed the show live, you can easily find the podcast uploaded daily on iHeartRadio. Just search Sunshine State Showdown on iHeartRadio. You can also find the video stream on our social accounts of our wonderful affiliates at 96.9 The Game, at The Game Jacks, at 940 Wins. So Major League Baseball unveiled its latest proposal to the players in an effort to return this year, a 67-page document that was sent out to the players and the Players Association. I won't read it all to you, mostly because, one, I haven't read all of it, and two, because it would take me the full hour of the show to do so. I'll give you a gist, and then we'll react to it. They say no Ubers for the players, so you can't go traveling around whatever town you're in an Uber. No shoulder-to-shoulder contact during the anthem. No post-game showers. That one I found interesting. Color-coded diagram showing exactly where players should stand and sit in the dugout, which is very similar to what you're seeing when you go out and about around town. No spitting, no sunflower seeds, so that's going to be a tough habit to break for these guys. High fives, fist bumps, and hugs are prohibited. I don't know that I agree with the fist bumps one. Players who test positive would be immediately quarantined. And then my favorite part of that one is that it does not then say what would then happen with your quarantine. Like if you're on the road in Cleveland, but you play in Philadelphia, are you stuck in Cleveland? Like, I don't understand exactly how all of this would work. This is a lot. I appreciate the efforts by Major League Baseball. We all want sports to come back, but this kind of leaves you going, there are probably more hurdles here than you're able to jump over. So I don't know what to make of this, Zach.
Yeah, and it's different than like finances, right? Like when you negotiate finances, you know the number is going to come down, right? You're trying to meet in the middle, but you don't necessarily negotiate medical safety. Like it's not like the players can come back and be like, all right, we looked at your proposal. We want the color-coded thing to stay the same. We agree with you on that. We're cool with the fist bumps. No sunflower seeds, but chewing bubble gum's okay. Like, there's not really wiggle room on like what is and isn't safe. Like, this is the only way that the MLB can completely cover its own behind. I did notice that in what you were saying as far as the gist, no handshakes, no high fives, no hugs. The Cubs were doing like crotch grabs for a season, I'm pretty sure. So they might be in the clear. The Cubbies might be able to keep staying weird.
Did they not detail crotch grabs in the 67 pages?
I don't think that it was explicitly mentioned. Although, you know, again, if it was mentioned, it's probably aimed directly at the Cubs. That was a weird trend that they had going there for a little bit. But again, you can't negotiate this aspect. And I know that the MLB is trying to watch its butt legality wise. I don't know, man. It was extremely thorough. I guess they could like come back with a modified version, and maybe they're just trying to put it out there to see what the players are and are not okay with in the realm of safety, right? Like maybe they look at some of this and the kickback and blowback from the players is you guys are way overdoing it. But if that's the case, then the MLB counters with, okay, we'll give you a 20-page report of how we're going to handle this, but you guys have to sign off that if something goes awry, that you're okay with it because we gave you the full report and you said it was too much. Like clearly they're thinking ahead, I think, in this report.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in comparing this to some sort of financial dispute where there's going to be some give and take. There's back and forth. I think a lot of what's being done here is they want to keep the players healthy. So don't take what I'm saying as they don't. But I think this is a lot more about appearances in that you don't want to be broadcasting Major League Baseball games where some people around the country are stuck inside because of health concerns in their particular communities. And you've got baseball players hugging each other and spitting on the ground. I think it's a lot more about the way that it looks than the actual science behind it. That's just my view, and that they want it to look good.
The showers part, though, because the showers part,
I don't get it. I don't get that at all. I mean, are we talking about like does the mist of the only way I can wrap my head around this? Because you would think that a shower, especially a hot shower, would kill the virus. That to me sounds like a positive. Some soap and some hot water be a great way to get rid of a virus. So for them to say that they don't want players to shower after the game, then what is the reasoning? Can the virus be spread through the mist that's created in the water? Is it because of the use of towels, and then you'd have to have people then using and cleaning those towels. I don't understand that at all. I don't.
I mean, like, so what's the alternative? Like, are they just going to load these guys up with Axe body spray like they're in middle school and say, well, you smell bad, just spray yourself with this?
Yeah, because you stink after playing 9 innings of baseball.
It's weird, bro. It's weird.
I don't get it. I don't know.
But again, though, but this is what I think, Brandon. I think that these people making the decision that put this MLB plan together are sitting in a room, right? And they're going through each one of these things as a bullet point. And they don't have them all written out, but they start with, well, we can't have guys spitting. And then they're like, yeah, but they're going to sweat. How do we handle the towels as they sweat on the field and yada, yada. And as they kind of go through each step, at one point, somebody in the room is like, well, what about after the game? Like, are they all going to avoid each other the whole game and then shower in the same locker room? And somebody was like, nope, they can't do that either. That's a good, right? Like, you're thinking through these things because it's such uncharted territory that we don't have a blueprint on what you can and can't do. So I think just as you go down for what is and isn't okay, and you're like, well, we got to take this away. Well, if we take that away, we got to take this away. And that's how you get to the point where you're saying they can't shower. But again, you put this proposal out there, and the players, I think, overwhelmingly are going to say, this is too much. We can't play like this. Like, this is, it's not plausible. It's not reasonable. And then the MLB is able to cut back because the players complained about it being too much. And then the MLB is able to say, this is your new proposal. It's a lot less, but you have to sign off on your health because you're the guys that wanted less.
Yeah, that's true. And then
leverage.
I think that's
leverage.
And then Major League Baseball can look to the public and go, look, we tried, and this is what the players agreed to. So this is what I think that we all, in order to keep our economy alive, at some point, I don't care what side of, I mean, I know that this has become a huge political debate, so this is not the reasoning
right.
or any substance behind what I'm saying in that. But at some point, you do need to restart the economy. You need to start working again. You need to start getting back out there. People need to make money, spend money if we're going to keep this country afloat. At some point, that has to happen. Now, you can argue about when that needs to happen. So at some point, we all need to make this decision. You're going to need to make a decision of when do you feel comfortable and what steps are you going to take? Because when you walk out that door, you're taking a risk. And at some point, we all need to make that decision. It's just a matter of when. And I think where the leagues are getting into some uncharted waters and some sticky ground is that they're trying to make these decisions for everybody, and they need agreement from a lot of different people and a lot of moving parts. It's really, really difficult to navigate and manage all of this, which is why, for me personally, and this is interesting because this just came out, and there's a lot of interesting detail to it. For me personally, as a sports fan and as a radio host, I've started to veer away from this stuff, and as we've discussed on this show, because it's so much hypothetical. There's so many different moving parts that I just want somebody who's in a position to figure it out, tell me about it, and then let's move on. But, this is the latest story. This is the latest wrinkle. Right around the corner, we'll talk about this with Glenn Geffner. He's the Marlins play-by-play voice. And
we need Glenn. I need Glenn. I got questions.
I need some optimism from Glenn. We'll see if we get it next.
to coast and throws it down.
Let's dive right into this bad boy, coast to coast, covering everything from the state capitol to the sandy shores of South Beach. Let's kick it over to Tampa, the MJ of the Bay. Zac Blobner, what you got?
All right, so we've been talking a lot of Marlins today. I want to continue that trend. Will the DH, the universal DH, I should say, because they're talking about using it throughout baseball this season in a shortened year, will that help the Marlins actually be successful this year? Fansided.com thinks it will. What do you think?
Yikes. I think it'll help everybody in the National League score some extra runs. So doesn't that kind of even things out at the end of the day? I'm not sure where it helps the Miami Marlins, but in fairness, I was going to let the season sort of play itself out in the beginning so that I could learn this new Marlins roster, and that has not happened yet. So I feel like I'm not yet an authority on this because I was going to watch closely. Look, we're on in Miami. Got to know what's going on with the Miami Marlins. But this has not been an interesting roster over the last couple of years. So I needed this, at least the early season, to play out so that I can make decisions like that.
I'm going to let you know with the roster they have, nothing will help them.
That's
not
likely.
Right
that's likely true. I'd still like to see it play out, make my own decisions rather than just believe what people tell me.
No comment. Let's head to the Rays. Did you notice last week there was a popular thing happening where somebody would put a logo or a picture out and say, what's the first thing that pops into your head? I think you guys did it at 96.9 The Game. I believe I saw you put your older logo out and say, what was the first thing you thought of? Well, the Rays did it as well with the Devil Rays logo. So when you see a Devil Rays logo, it's the first thing that pops into your head.
Wade Boggs, for some reason.
Really?
Yeah. I just remember this big name coming to this brand new team that nobody knew anything about, and I thought that was pretty cool. So when I see that logo, my first thought is Wade Boggs.
Very interesting. Yeah, I went Fred McGriff, but I'd say Fred McGriff, Will McCracken. I love the Devil Rays uniforms. I don't care.
I did too.
Let's go to the Dolphins. Let's talk a little football. Surprisingly light show on football today. What kind of world do we live in here?
We'll make up for it tomorrow. Don't worry, Zach.
I was reading up on an article about the Dolphins this morning in which it referenced Miami needing to, quote unquote, trust the process, Brandon. Are the Fins the NBA's version of the Fins the NFL's version of the 76ers?
You know, I guess they are. I can't think of anybody else that would fit the bill, and they went through the tanking process. They got their guys, and now they're going for it. So I guess they are. And Brett Brown's a good coach, and I think Brian Flores is too. So they are very process-like. We need to come up with some sort of like South Florida Dolphin pun name for it, but I think I like that one.
I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to come up with Dolphin puns. Last one for you. Gronk's birthday was last week. We missed it. What's your favorite Gronk moment ever? The 24/7 champ still, by the way.
Yikes. Greatest Gronk moment. I don't know. Just thinking of him spiking the football always brings joy to my heart. Man, that guy plays with a joy and a passion, and I appreciate that about Rob Gronkowski, and I look forward to seeing that with the Tampa Bay Bucs. Folks, that covers it for today. Thanks for spending some time with us. I'm Brandon Kravitz. He's Zac Blobner, and we're back tomorrow at 5 p.m. on the Sunshine State Showdown.